Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this expectation of, absolute precision. It's treated almost like structural engineering.
Oh, totally, like finding a cracked pipe.
Right. You break your arm, you go into a clinic, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the screen, and the doctor just points to it and says, yep, there it is. That is the problem.
It's entirely binary. It's either broken or it's not broken. And we naturally gravitate toward that kind of clarity because, well, it's immensely comforting.
It is.
We like our ailments to be visible, to be neatly categorized, and to have a definitive physical source that we can pinpoint.
But then you step into the world of human biology, energy, and the physical impact of our everyday behavioral patterns, and suddenly that pristine x-ray machine is just, utterly useless.
Right, the picture gets blurry.
Very blurry. We find ourselves looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky. We're forced to look beyond the jagged white line and ask, what invisible forces might be contributing to the physical reality of our bodies.
That is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. When you move away from acute trauma, like a broken bone, and start looking at chronic physical states, energetic depletion, or even just the psychosomatic manifestations of stress, the standard map simply doesn't apply anymore.
And that brings us directly to our mission for this session. Today, we're exploring a completely fascinating, entirely anonymous transcript that crossed our desks.
It really is a wild text.
It is. And the entire mission of this text is to analyze how the words we speak, literally, and I mean both biologically and energetically, shape our physical reality, our health, and really our entire life trajectory.
It's a highly provocative premise, for sure. The idea that our vocabulary is not just a tool for communication, but an actual biological programming language.
Yes, the source material basically treats human life as an ongoing art form. It suggests that humans are the artists, and the specific brushstrokes we use to paint our daily reality are the actual physical words we speak out loud.
Which is a beautiful way to think about it.
It is, but it's also intense. So, our mission for this deep dive today is to decode how our bodies react to sound and to figure out how we might be accidentally programming our own hardships. The connections presented in this text are bizarre, they are fascinating, but the mechanics behind them are undeniably complex.
Yeah, there is a lot of moving parts.
So I am officially handing you the reins to be our guide through the science and the internal mechanics of this. You're going to have to explain the actual how and why behind these bold claims.
I am more than happy to take that on. It's a brilliant puzzle to piece together, especially when you look at the sequential logic the text builds.
Awesome. But before we jump into the mechanics of it all, I want you, the listener, to just pause for a second. I want you to think about the last time you casually sighed and muttered, I'm struggling, or I'm so exhausted.
We all do it.
We do. Think about the times you've just whispered it under your breath while making coffee in the morning or waiting at a red light in traffic. Keep that specific memory in your back pocket as we go through this, because by the end of this conversation, you are going to look at those casual little complaints in a completely different light.
You really will.
So let's start right at the physical source of all this. Let's look at the anatomy, because there is this mind-blowing concept in the text regarding the human mouth. It describes a literal piano in our mouths. Can you explain what is actually happening on a physical level when we speak?
Yeah, so to understand the baseline of this entire philosophy, we have to look at the physical architecture of the human mouth, specifically the upper palate.
Okay.
According to the text, located right there in the roof of your mouth, there are 14 distinct energy meridians.
Wait, 14 energetic touch points just sitting there on the roof of the mouth.
Exactly.
And for clarity, when the text says meridians, we're talking about conduits of energy, similar to what you might find in traditional acupuncture mapping.
Exactly the same concept, yeah. They are specific intersection points where energetic pathways meet physical tissue. Now, think about the biomechanics of what happens when you speak a sentence.
Your tongue moves around a lot.
Right. Your tongue has to move with incredible precision. It's shaping the airflow from your lungs, bouncing off your teeth and the roof of your mouth to form specific consonants and vowels. But what the text argues is that the tongue is doing far more than just shaping air. On a subtle, energetic level, the tip of your tongue is physically striking those 14 meridians in rapid succession.
So the tongue is the actual mechanism of action here.
Yes. The text uses this really beautiful analogy. It says the tongue acts exactly like the fingers of a master pianist hitting the keys of a grand piano.
Wow.
Every single word you articulate is a unique mathematical combination of strikes against those 14 meridians. You aren't just making a sound wave that travels outward into the room, you are generating a very specific physical and energetic melody right there inside your own skull.
A physical melody that is being played on the roof of the mouth. That's a crazy image. But how does that melody get out of the mouth and actually affect the rest of the body? Like, what is the transmission system?
Well, the transmission system is perhaps the most abundant resource we have, which is water.
Okay, water.
Yeah, the human body is composed of roughly 80% water, and water, as a biological substance, is incredibly receptive to vibration and frequency. It's highly impressionable.
I mean, we see that in basic physics, right? You put a glass of water on a speaker, and the surface of the water immediately dances and organizes itself into geometric patterns based on whatever song is playing.
That is the exact mechanism happening internally. When your tongue plays that specific sequence of strikes on the meridians of your upper palate, the resulting vibrations do not just vanish into the air around you.
They stay inside.
They literally ripple downward through the cellular water of your own body. Because your cells are largely composed of water, you're sending a vibratory frequency directly into your own biological makeup. The words you speak vibrate your own internal ocean.
Okay, let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. I'm talking, my tongue is rapidly hitting these 14 meridian keys on the roof of my mouth, and the physical vibration of those strikes is echoing down through the water in my cells, altering their frequency.
You've got it perfectly.
That alone is a lot to process. But the text goes even deeper than just the physical water in our bodies, right? It introduces this concept of the layers of who we are.
Yes, the five bodies concept. This is where the mechanics of the text move from basic physical vibration into complex energetic translation.
Okay.
The text posits that we don't just inhabit one single, dense physical body. We actually exist across 5 distinct, interconnected layers or bodies.
The text mentions 5. I mean, I'm obviously familiar with the physical body, and we often talk colloquially about our emotional state. But how is this source defining the other layers, and how do they interact?
So the text organizes them sequentially, starting from the most subtle, highest frequency layer down to the most dense material layer.
Okay, so top to bottom.
Right. First, you have the spiritual body. Below that is the mental body. Then comes the emotional body, which the text sometimes refers to as the astral body. Below that is the etheric body. And finally, at the very bottom, the densest layer of all, the physical body.
So spiritual, mental, emotional, etheric, physical. How does a spoken word, a vibration from the mouth, travel through these 5 distinct layers?
It operates as a perfect top-down cascade. When you speak a word, the frequency generated by those meridian strikes doesn't just hit the physical water in your cells immediately.
It doesn't.
No. On an energetic level, it enters the very top layer of this system first. It enters the spiritual body.
So the vibration goes to the absolute most subtle layer before it does anything else.
Correct. It enters the spiritual body as raw, unformatted data. Think of it as pure, uncompiled computer code. It hasn't been assigned a meaning or an emotion yet. It's just a frequency signature.
Just raw data.
Exactly. And this brings us to the most crucial mechanism in the entire text. The mechanism that explains why we end up manifesting the exact things we speak. The higher levels of this system, specifically the spiritual body and the mental body, do not possess a moral compass.
Wait, the higher layers don't judge the information.
They do not.
That feels incredibly counterintuitive to how we normally view these things.
Yeah.
Usually we think of our spiritual side as our ultimate moral compass, the part of us that knows right from wrong or good from bad.
It is a really common misconception, but the text is very clear on this point.
Mm-hmm.
In this framework, the spiritual and mental bodies are not judges. They are processing plants. They are entirely neutral.
Huh.
They don't sit there and evaluate the incoming frequency saying, oh, this frequency of joy is positive and healthy, let's expedite this. Or, oh, this frequency of despair is negative and destructive, let's block this from reaching the physical body.
They just accept whatever data is handed to them.
Entirely. Their only function in this biological machinery is to receive the frequency, translate it into the appropriate energetic form for that specific layer, and then pass it down the chain to the next body.
So it's just a relay race.
Pretty much. So the spiritual body receives the raw frequency of the spoken word. It translates that raw data and hands it down to the mental body. The mental body acts as the architect. It takes that frequency and constructs a cognitive framework around it, turning it into a tangible thought pattern.
So if the original frequency was the word anger, the mental body receives it and builds the blueprints for angry thoughts.
Yes. And once the mental body has built that thought pattern, it hands it down to the emotional or astral body. The emotional body is the chemical catalyst.
Right.
It converts that abstract thought into a visceral feeling, a mood. It takes the blueprint of anger and generates the actual sensation of frustration or rage. The emotional body then drops this feeling down to the etheric body.
Almost to the bottom.
Right. And the etheric body acts as the energetic scaffolding or the blueprint for the physical form. It prepares the physical tissue for the incoming energy. And finally, the etheric body anchors that feeling firmly into the physical body, which is where it manifests as a raised heart rate, tense muscles, or a flush of adrenaline.
It's an unbroken chain of command.
It is a perfect, uninterrupted cascade from the exact moment the word leaves your tongue, hits the meridian, and travels down through the layers until it manifests as a physical reality or a lived biological experience.
Okay, let's unpack this. If I'm trying to map this abstract concept onto something I can actually visualize, it's exactly like a completely blind assembly line in a massive factory.
Okay, I like that.
Right. The workers at the very top of the conveyor belt, the ones representing the spiritual and mental bodies, are wearing blindfolds. They absolutely do not care if the raw material being dumped onto their belt is pure, valuable gold, or if it is highly radioactive toxic waste. That is simply not their department.
Not at all.
Their only job, their only directive, is to take the material, bolt the pieces together, pack it into a box, stamp it, and send it down the line until it reaches the loading dock, which is our physical body.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. The assembly line never stops running, the conveyor belt never slows down, and the workers at the top never question the quality of the materials. They just blindly build whatever blueprints you hand them and ship them to your physical reality.
And the blueprints are our words. So, to the listener tuning into this right now, I really want you to let that sink in. Every single word you mutter, even the ones you think are harmless, even the ones you just sigh under your breath out of habit, you are literally pulling a massive lever on that blind assembly line. You are dumping the raw materials onto the conveyor belt and telling the blindfolded workers to start building.
Which naturally brings us to a very critical question. What are the actual materials we are choosing to send down the line on a daily basis?
Exactly. Because if our mouth is the piano sending unjudged data to our physical bodies, then the specific words we choose are the sheet music. We are writing the song. And the text points out some very specific, highly common trap words that we use all the time without thinking. Can we break down the mechanics of what happens when we use these traps? Let's start with the one that really caught my attention.
Let's look at the patience trap. Because the body and our energetic reality respond quite literally to our vocabulary, certain common words trigger completely unintended and honestly often frustrating consequences.
People ask for patience constantly. It's viewed as a virtue. Lord, give me patience, or I just need more patience to deal with this. This is a daily mantra for a lot of people.
It is a very common plea, but the text asks us to examine the biological and energetic mechanism of that specific word. The system, the blind assembly line, hears the request. The frequency of patience enters the spiritual body and cascades down. But patience, by its very definition, is not a standalone emotion that can exist in a vacuum.
Right.
It requires a frictional force to exist.
I struggle with that literal interpretation a bit. If someone asks for patience to deal with their crying toddler, is the text actually arguing that the universe or this internal system manifests a brand new crisis just to grant the request? Or is it more of a psychological shift in how the parent perceives the toddler's behavior?
Well, the source material leans heavily into the literal, energetic fulfillment of the request. According to the text's mechanics, patience cannot be actualized without a trial, a tribulation, or a delay.
Oh, wow.
You cannot exercise patience if everything in your life is running smoothly and nothing is annoying you. Therefore, if you continually broadcast the frequency of patience down your assembly line, the system must inevitably bring you a problem, a hardship, or an irritation in order to test and build that patience.
So by asking for the virtue of patience, you're literally signaling the system to bring you more chaos. It's like ordering a fire extinguisher online, and the universe says, great, you clearly need a fire to use this on. Let me just light your kitchen on fire so you can utilize your new tool.
That is the exact paradox the text is highlighting. You get the fire so you can use the extinguisher. The system honors your request, but the mechanics of fulfilling that request require hardship. Another major vocabulary trap the text identifies is the struggling trap.
This one feels incredibly prevalent. I'm struggling right now. It's a real struggle. People use it as a default state of being.
Yes. Or variations like, I have to do this, I am just surviving, or everything is so hard right now. When you consistently articulate the phrase, I'm struggling, you are programming the raw data at the very top of the assembly line with the heavy, dense frequency of struggle.
And because the spiritual and mental bodies are blindfolded, they don't intervene.
Exactly. Remember the neutrality of the higher bodies. They don't look at the data and say, oh, they are struggling, they are in pain, let's help them out and send down a frequency of relief or ease.
No, they just process it.
Right. They simply say, the requested frequency being generated by the meridian strikes is struggle. Let us construct the cognitive and emotional blueprints for struggle, and let us ensure the physical reality matches this frequency.
That is so intense.
So the system honors your word by ensuring the physical and emotional struggle continues. It creates a continuous, self-fulfilling energetic loop. You speak the struggle, the body processes the struggle, the reality reflects the struggle, which prompts you to speak about the struggle again.
It's a closed circuit of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But wait, the text mentions a piece of pushback here that I think a lot of people immediately feel when they hear this concept. If we have to rigorously monitor every single syllable that comes out of our mouths, won't we just become these stiff, mechanical robots, like we're walking on eggshells all the time, terrified to speak freely in case we accidentally order a fire extinguisher for our kitchen?
It's a highly valid concern, and it's a completely natural reaction to realizing the weight of your own vocabulary. But the text addresses it quite beautifully by comparing it to the mechanics of learning any physical skill. The mechanism of conscious speech is really no different than motor learning. The best parallel the source provides is the act of riding a bicycle.
Learning to ride a bike is terrifying and clumsy.
Right. When you first learn to ride, it takes immense, draining conscious effort. You're overthinking your balance, your pedaling cadence, the angle of your steering. Every movement feels mechanical, unnatural, and exhausting. You're hyper-aware of every variable. But eventually, what happens in the brain?
The neural pathways solidify. It becomes unconscious muscle memory. You can ride a bike while drinking a coffee and talking to a friend without ever thinking about your balance.
Exactly. The action transfers from conscious, laborious effort to unconscious competence. The text argues that your tongue and your vocabulary work the exact same way. If you consciously undertake the effort to teach your tongue a new baseline, if you actively mechanically catch yourself saying, I'm struggling, and force yourself to replace it with, I am learning, or I am finding a new way through this, it will absolutely feel robotic and forced at first.
Yeah, you'll definitely feel like you're on eggshells.
But over time, the physical muscles of the tongue and the neural pathways in the brain adapt to the new sheet music. Once the tongue is taught this new elevated baseline, it will start generating those positive frequencies automatically. You won't have to monitor every syllable anymore. The new constructive vocabulary becomes your default biological setting.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. That transition from conscious effort to unconscious competence is fascinating, because when you really step back and look at our current default settings, you realize how absolutely reckless we are with our casual, everyday idioms.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about how often people use morbid metaphors to express excitement or annoyance. Oh my gosh, I'm dying to go to that new restaurant. Or, my boss is absolutely killing me with this workload right now. We throw these phrases around, completely oblivious to the biological work orders we are submitting to our internal factory.
The literalism of the biological and energetic body is incredibly unforgiving in this regard. When you say, this job is killing me, your conscious waking mind obviously knows it's a metaphor. You know you aren't literally expiring at your desk.
Right.
But your cellular water, your physical meridians, and your lower energy bodies do not possess a dictionary of cultural idioms. They do not understand sarcasm or metaphor. They only process the raw vibratory frequency of the word killing.
So the blindfolded workers on the assembly line hear killing, and they start packing boxes filled with the energetic frequency of decay or termination, and they ship it right to your physical body. That is wild to think about.
It is a sobering thought.
It makes you realize how much unnecessary heavy lifting our bodies are doing just to process our dramatic figures of speech. So, to you listening right now, I highly recommend doing a ruthless mental audit of your own default catchphrases today. What are your go-to phrases when you are stressed at work? What is the first thing you say when you walk in the door at home and drop your bags? Are you constantly claiming that you are broke or dead tired or permanently stuck? Because if you are, according to the mechanics of this text, you are sitting at the piano and actively writing the sheet music for your own misery.
Exactly. You are the composer of that specific reality.
But if we follow the logical progression of the text, If our own internal vocabulary is acting as a blind assembly line for our physical health, it makes me wonder about the collateral damage. If I'm generating these frequencies, what happens to the people standing next to me? It's not just the words we say about ourselves that harm us, right? It's also the words we speak, or even just the words we passively listen to about other people. The text takes a very hard look at the mechanics of gossip.
Yes. This section detailing the mechanics of gossip is perhaps one of the most profound and biologically concerning parts of this entire material. The text argues that being in an environment where malicious gossip or heavy judgment is actively occurring is a biological disaster for the human body.
The text implies it literally makes you sick, physically sick, just to be in the room.
It does. The core mechanism at play here is environmental frequency. The text uses a highly evocative comparison. It likens a room full of negative gossip to a closed room full of secondhand smoke. You might not be the one with a cigarette in your mouth. You might not be contributing a single word to the gossip. You might just be sitting there quietly eating your lunch while others do the talking.
But you're still inhaling the toxic fumes.
Exactly, because energetic frequency is highly transmissible. It is contagious.
Secondhand smoke. That makes a terrifying amount of sense. The sound waves of the gossip are still entering your ears, still vibrating the water in your cells, even if you aren't the one striking the piano keys.
Right. When you enter a conversational field of gossip, you are stepping into a highly dense negative vibratory field. Your system is forced to absorb and process that frequency. And the text is incredibly specific about the physical toll this absorption takes. It doesn't just make you feel a bit emotionally drained or pessimistic. It manifests as distinct, diagnosable physical ailments.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
The source material specifically lists conditions like gastritis, severe stomach ulcers, unexplained chronic back and neck pain, and even fibromyalgia.
Wait, really? I am genuinely staggered by that list of physical diseases. Fibromyalgia and stomach ulcers, triggered simply by being around people who are talking trash. What is the biological rationale for that? Why does the body translate gossip into an ulcer?
The rationale the text provides is based on where the body stores unprocessed energy. When you absorb the frequency of judgment, malice, and lack that characterizes gossip, the body struggles to metabolize it. The digestive tract is often viewed as the emotional processing center of the physical body.
Oh, that makes sense. The gut connection.
Exactly. So when it attempts to digest this heavy toxic frequency, it fails. The energy gets stuck. This leads to localized inflammation, excessive acid production, and tissue damage, resulting in gastritis or ulcers. Alternatively, if the energy gets lodged in the nervous system or the fascia, it creates the widespread chronic pain associated with fibromyalgia or severe back tension.
The body is physically inflaming because it's trying to digest an indigestible frequency. And I imagine the mental toll is just as severe as the physical one.
It is. Absorbing that secondhand smoke of gossip severely disrupts the mental and emotional bodies we discussed earlier. It manifests as an unexplained, subtle rise in baseline anxiety. It can trigger unexpected panic attacks. Over time, chronic exposure can lead to persistent mood disorders. Your biological and energetic system is fundamentally rejecting the toxic environment, and it is firing off alarm bells in the form of anxiety and pain to get you to leave the room.
It completely reframes the entire concept of office politics or family drama. It's like engaging in gossip, or even just being the polite listener who nods along, is the equivalent of drinking a glass of poison and expecting the person you're gossiping about to die. You are the one swallowing the poison. Your cells are the ones vibrating with the malice. But the text goes even deeper into the psychology of why we generate this toxic frequency in the first place, right? There's a biological and psychological mirror at play when we judge others.
The mirror effect. This is a vital piece of the puzzle regarding human behavior. The psychological mechanism explained in the text is that our perception of others is almost entirely a projection of our own internal unhealed state.
Right.
When we find ourselves relentlessly criticizing or judging someone else's life, maybe we're hyperfixated on how they spend their money, the clothes they wear, their perceived arrogance, or the dynamics of their relationships, we logically think we are analyzing them. But mechanically, we are actually projecting our own hidden flaws, insecurities, and unresolved traumas outward onto a convenient target.
We see the mirror effect discussed in modern psychology all the time, the idea of psychological projection. But what makes this source unique is how it inextricably links that psychological concept to the physical biology of the body. It's as we only see what we already possess inside us.
Exactly. The text states as a fundamental mechanical truth that the flaws we spot so easily and so enthusiastically in others are simply mirrors of the exact flaws we hold, often unconsciously, inside ourselves. The mechanics rely on resonance.
Meaning?
Meaning, if you are deeply, inexplicably bothered by someone else's perceived arrogance, the text argues it's because you have an unresolved, turbulent relationship with your own ego. If you judge someone harshly for being materialistic or shallow, it's highlighting your own deep-seated anxieties about lack, survival, or self-worth.
It's the tuning fork analogy. You cannot resonate with a specific flaw in someone else unless that exact frequency already exists within your own internal tuning fork. If you didn't have the frequency inside you, their behavior wouldn't trigger a reaction. It would just pass right through you unnoticed.
Precisely. The trigger is the proof of the internal mirror.
That is an incredibly tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
It strips away all the righteous indignation we feel when we judge people. But it is a brilliant diagnostic tool if you are willing to use it. So, to you listening, I want to challenge you right now in the privacy of your own mind. Think about the people you argue with the most. Think about that one coworker or family member who absolutely drives you up the wall, the one you constantly complain about. I want you to objectively, ruthlessly check yourself. Are the specific traits that absolutely infuriate you about them actually traits that you secretly possess or fear within yourself? It is a scary mirror to look into.
It is uncomfortable work, for sure.
But if we take a step back and look at the picture the text is painting, if the external world is just this absolute minefield of toxic gossip, secondhand smoke, projective mirrors, and negative frequencies, we clearly need to establish an internal sanctuary. We need a way to clean the filter.
Yeah.
And the source material points to the most fundamental automatic rhythm we possess as the key to finding that sanctuary. It points to our breath.
The breath is presented as the ultimate anchor. According to the text, the breath is our continuous internal biological rhythm. It is the metronome of the physical body. It regulates the pacing of all 5 bodies. But the text makes a very stark, almost alarming observation about how modern humans utilize this tool. It states that unconscious, shallow breathing is basically equated to being one of the living dead.
The living dead, that is a heavy label for just taking a shallow breath.
It uses that terminology because if you aren't consciously engaged with your breath, you are completely disconnected from your own life force. You are just a biological machine operating on stressed autopilot, easily manipulated by external frequencies. But what's truly fascinating is the text's mechanical breakdown of the degradation of breath over time. The source points out that humans are not inherently born as bad breathers. We don't start out broken.
Oh, right, the babies and the dogs.
Yes, in fact, it observes that babies, specifically up to about 2 years of age, and animals like dogs, breathe absolutely perfectly.
They breathe with their whole entire bodies. There's no restriction.
Yeah. If you watch a sleeping infant, or if you watch a dog resting on the floor, you'll notice that their chest barely moves, but their entire abdomen expands and contracts rhythmically. They are utilizing their full lung capacity, drawing the air deep down into their bellies, engaging the diaphragm completely. The oxygen exchange in their blood is optimal. The vibratory frequency of their physical machinery is perfectly tuned. They are biologically synchronized.
That sounds amazing.
It is, but as human beings age past that 2-year mark, the text claims a specific biological and psychological corruption occurs.
Why age 2? What is the specific mechanism that changes in a toddler that ruins their breathing?
Age 2 is roughly the developmental milestone where the ego begins to form and solidify. Complex, abstract emotions develop. The child begins to understand the concept of separation, the idea of me versus them. They start absorbing societal anxieties, the fear of parental judgment, the stress of expectations, the realization of vulnerability. And mechanically, what happens is that these new psychological burdens trigger a constant, low-grade fight-or-flight response within the developing nervous system.
The ego literally tenses the physical body up. It creates armor.
Exactly. The ego creates emotional and physical armor to protect the vulnerable sense of self. And that chronic physical tension literally mechanically constricts the diaphragm. The muscle cannot really descend. So instead of breathing deeply and peacefully into our bellies like an infant, the corrupted adult breath is forced upward into the chest. It becomes shallow, rapid, and panicked.
We lose access to the bottom half of our lungs.
We do. We are essentially hyperventilating our way through adulthood because the defense mechanisms of our ego have disrupted the natural, automatic mechanism of respiration. We are constantly signaling to our nervous system that we are in danger simply because of how we breathe.
It's amazing to think about the comparison to babies and animals. Because a dog doesn't harbor an ego. A dog doesn't hold a grudge against another dog for stealing a toy 3 weeks ago. They don't lie awake at night worrying about their canine career trajectory. They don't have that mental baggage which allows their physical machinery, their breath, to just operate perfectly as designed, free of tension. And we completely lose that pristine state.
We do.
But the text doesn't just leave us suffocating in our chest cavities. It offers a mechanical way back to ourselves. There's this profound overarching metaphor in the text about self-discovery, bypassing the ego and finding our breath again. It is called the dark tunnel concept.
The dark tunnel of self. This is the text's mechanical explanation for how an individual accesses their own internal truth and repairs these corrupted systems. The inner mind, the deep subconscious where true healing occurs, is compared to a massive, sprawling, dark subway tunnel.
Pitch black, no natural light.
Completely devoid of light. But, crucially, the text outlines that this tunnel is fully equipped with an electrical grade of motion sensor lights.
Motion sensors. Not a light switch you can just flip from the entrance.
Right. And that distinction is vital. The text asserts that the answers to every single question we have, the solutions to our deep-seated anxieties, the blueprint for perfect health and perfect breathing, it all already exists entirely inside of us. The tunnel is fully constructed and fully wired, but the space remains in complete, terrifying darkness until we actively take a physical or mental step forward into it.
You literally have to move your body or shift your consciousness to trigger the mechanism that provides the light.
You must generate the motion. The system requires your kinetic or energetic investment as you step forward into the darkness of your own mind by choosing to practice radical self-awareness, by sitting in uncomfortable silence, by consciously forcing your breath down into your belly. That action acts as the motion. The motion sensor light clicks on, illuminating just the next few feet of the tunnel in front of you.
It doesn't light up the whole tunnel to the exit. Just enough to take the next step.
Exactly. It provides only the illumination required for immediate progress, and the text makes a very important, empowering point about the role of guides, mentors, or external teachers in this process. A guide, no matter how wise or enlightened, cannot carry you through your own tunnel. They cannot turn the lights on for you. The mechanism of the motion sensors simply doesn't work that way. The sensor is calibrated exclusively to your specific energetic weight and frequency.
So if a guide can't turn on the lights or carry me, what is their actual function? Why do we seek them out?
According to the text, a true guide simply stands further down the dark tunnel in a section of your mind you haven't yet reached, and they call out to you. They use their voice to signal that a safe path exists ahead. They might yell back, "I have navigated a section just like this. The ground is stable here. Watch your step on the left. Keep coming toward my voice." They provide acoustic orientation. But you, and only you, have to be the one to put your foot down into the dark and trigger the light.
That is such a powerful, visceral visualization. The light is there, the electricity is fully functional, but the entire system remains dormant until it registers your personal momentum. So to you listening right now, I want you to do me a favor. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of breath and tension. I want you to take a deep breath right at this exact moment, just one conscious breath. As you inhale, did your shoulders instantly tense up and rise toward your ears? Did you just suck a tiny, rapid bit of air into your upper chest? Or did you breathe like a sleeping baby, keeping your shoulders relaxed and expanding deep into your belly? If your shoulders went up, your ego and your accumulated stress are driving your physical vehicle right now.
It's a quick, easy diagnostic tool.
But here's where the text introduces the final and perhaps most urgent piece of the puzzle. Once you do start to step into that dark tunnel, once you start consciously fixing your internal lights and retraining your breath, you suddenly become hyper-aware of the external world again. Your sensitivity returns. And as that sensitivity returns, you start to notice the macro forces that are actively trying to turn your lights back off.
Yes. The text makes it very clear that the external environment is not a neutral playing field.
No, it is highly active. And this brings us to a part of the text that is completely fascinating, certainly intimidating, but absolutely crucial to understand if we're mapping out the full picture. It moves from individual biology to global systems. It talks about how sound and frequency are actually weaponized on a massive scale.
The weaponization of sound and frequency. This is where the scope of the source material expands significantly. The premise presented here is that invisible frequencies are the primary modern tools of mass influence and control. We generally tend to think of societal influence in terms of tangible things, visual advertisements, written propaganda, political speeches, or economic policies. But the text focuses entirely on invisible, acoustic, and energetic frequencies.
What specific kinds of frequencies is the text claiming are being weaponized? Are we talking about literal sound waves or something more subtle?
The text encompasses both. It points to frequencies embedded in mass media, in digital marketing, subliminal acoustic messages layered into entertainment, and even the constant low-grade electromagnetic hum of modern technology.
Wow.
The text suggests that instead of deploying physical weapons to control populations, these invisible frequencies are deployed to manipulate human behavior and emotional states on a global scale. The mechanical goal of these frequencies is to entrain the brainwaves of the population, thereby creating a homogenized, predictable herd mentality.
By entrain, you mean the frequencies literally force our biological brain waves to sync up and match their artificial rhythm?
Correct. Entrainment is a known physical phenomenon. The human brain naturally seeks harmony with its environment. It will subconsciously mimic the dominant frequency it's exposed to.
Okay, that makes sense.
The text argues that if the dominant frequency being broadcast through media and technology is one of fear, constant anxiety, or insatiable consumption, the unprotected brain will automatically align its own neural oscillations to match that state of panic or lack. And the text goes further, detailing a specific biological vulnerability that makes humanity highly susceptible to this entrainment. It points directly to the degradation of our physical perception organs, specifically focusing on the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, the small endocrine gland located right in the center of the brain,
Yeah.
often referred to historically as the third eye.
Yes. The text explains that the pineal gland operates not just as an endocrine organ, but as a primary biological receiver for subtle energetic frequencies and higher situational awareness. However, the text claims that this gland literally becomes calcified and physically shuts down due to continuous exposure to modern environmental factors.
Calcified, meaning it physically hardens and loses its biological function. Now, I want to be very clear for everyone listening. The text takes a highly controversial conspiracy-adjacent stance here regarding the cause of this calcification. It points specifically to modern chemical additives. Can you explain the author's argument without validating it as objective science? What is the text claiming causes this?
According strictly to the mechanics outlined by the author of this anonymous text, specific environmental toxins are responsible for this calcification, most notably sodium fluoride, which is commonly found in municipal water supplies and everyday dental products like toothpaste.
So the text is arguing that the fluoride in everyday toothpaste is chemically reacting with the brain to calcify our internal antenna.
That is the assertion made in the source material, yes. The text argues that continuous daily exposure to these substances physically coats and hardens the gland, drastically dulling our internal perception and severing our connection to our higher mental and spiritual bodies. And the ultimate result of this biological dulling, when combined with the constant barrage of weaponized, fear-based external frequencies, is a profound societal blindness.
We literally lose the biological hardware required to see what is actually happening around us.
That is the author's conclusion. Without a functioning pineal gland, we lose our capacity for independent, critical thinking. We suffer from chronic, scattered attention spans. We become entirely reliant on the lower emotional and physical bodies, reacting only to base stimuli.
So we're just reacting, not thinking.
Exactly. We end up in a state of suspended animation, a trance-like state where the population passively waits for external authorities, politicians, influencers, media figures, to process reality and do their thinking for them. The text posits that the herd mentality is not a psychological failing, but a biologically engineered state.
Okay, let's explore this concept of the herd mentality, because the text uses an incredibly perfect, vivid analogy to illustrate how this entrainment actually plays out in real life. It compares it to Istanbul traffic. Have you ever seen footage of this or experienced it?
I've seen the videos. It's wild.
Imagine a massive, miles-long gridlock. No one is moving. Suddenly, one single person sitting in their car gets impatient and honks their horn. And instantly, almost like a biological reflex traveling down the highway, 100 other drivers blindly start slamming on their horns. They have absolutely no idea why they are doing it. There is no immediate danger. The traffic clearly isn't moving, but they hear a frequency. The aggressive sound wave of the honk, and their corrupted biological programming forces them to echo it. It is the ultimate real-world proof of our closed-off, herd-like perception. We just honk because the person next to us is honking. We absorb the frequency of frustration and broadcast it back out without a single independent thought. So, looking at this massive, slightly terrifying picture, how do we stop honking? How do we break the entrainment?
The remedy, according to the final chapters of the text, is actually profoundly empowering because it relies entirely on internal mechanics that you control. External frequencies, whether they are subliminal marketing campaigns, societal fear broadcasts, or just the panic of the herd in traffic, can only successfully manipulate your biological system if you are unaware of them.
So conscious awareness acts as the shield.
Exactly. The moment you become conscious of the manipulation, the mechanism of entrainment breaks. By taking radical, uncompromising responsibility for your own thoughts, by choosing to step into that dark tunnel, generating the motion to turn on your own sensor lights, consciously breathing into your belly, and deliberately choosing the sheet music you play on the piano in your mouth, you actively neutralize the external interference. You manually change your internal frequency to a baseline that simply does not vibrate in resonance with the panic or the consumption frequencies being broadcast around you.
It's like tuning your car radio to a completely different station. The static and the angry broadcasts are still out there in the airwaves. They are still passing through the car. But because your receiver is tuned to a higher frequency, you literally cannot hear the noise anymore. It doesn't affect your drive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You stop being a passive receiver and become an active broadcaster. You take the steering wheel back from the environment.
I absolutely love that conclusion. So, to you listening, the call to action from this incredible source material is loud and clear. Stop waiting for a savior to fix your life. Stop waiting for the guide to carry you down the tunnel. And stop waiting for the crowd to tell you when it is appropriate to honk your horn. You have the steering wheel. You have the piano keys. You just need to wake up, pull the air deep down into your belly, and grab control of the machinery. And as we wrap up this massive exploration today, I just want to take a moment to summarize how beautifully and intricately all these mechanical pieces connect. We started by learning the astonishing anatomy of our speech, how the words we speak are playing an actual physical piano on the 14 meridians on the roof of our mouths, and how those specific melodies ripple downward through the receptive water in our cells.
Right, the water carries the tune.
Exactly. We learned that our 5 energetic bodies act like a blind, indifferent assembly line, happily building whatever reality our vocabulary demands, whether we are trapping ourselves in a loop of struggling or empowering ourselves with a vocabulary of growth.
We also examined the collateral damage, seeing how the secondhand smoke of gossip physically degrades our cellular health, causing literal inflammation while mirroring our own hidden psychological flaws back at us.
Right. And we looked at the metronome of life, discovering how infants and animals hold the biological secret to the perfect, uncorrupted breath, while our adult egos tense us up into a state of shallow, panicked hyperventilation. But most importantly, we learn that we possess a dark tunnel of truth inside of our own minds, fully wired and just waiting for us to generate the kinetic motion to turn on the lights. And when we do that, when we take responsibility for our frequency, we become functionally immune to the weaponized sounds of the modern world trying to entrain us into a mindless herd. The entire message of this anonymous source material is so profoundly empowering when you look at the whole picture. We are not fragile victims tossed around by a chaotic world. We are the artists. We are the architects. And we're literally painting our physical and energetic reality with every single syllable we drop into the air.
It is a radical and profound shift in perspective. It moves you from a passive observer of your health to the active director of your biology.
It really is a paradigm shift. But before we officially close out this session, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, mind-bending question to chew on. It is something that builds logically on the mechanics we just discussed, but takes it directly into the reality of our modern, screen-obsessed lives.
Oh, this is a good one.
We now know the theory that spoken words physically hit those 14 meridians and ripple through the water in our bodies. But what happens in our modern digital age when we type a furious, highly negative comment online without ever making a physical sound? Does the intense, silent mental vocalization of those angry words in your head as you type trigger the exact same energetic piano in your brain? Even without the tongue striking the palate, are we physically poisoning our own cellular water in complete and utter silence just by aggressively hammering our thumbs on a glass screen?
That is a fascinating mechanical question, and it implies that the mental body might be able to initiate the cascade all on its own.
It is definitely something to think about the next time your thumbs start flying over a keyboard in the comments section. Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive exploration today. Stay curious. Remember to take a deep, slow belly breath, and always remember to speak beautifully. Until next time.